All right, this is chapter 2 of William Walker Atkinson's The Mystery of Sex, or Sex Polarity. Chapter 2 is called The Law of Love. Not only do we find manifestations of the creative sex principle in the animal and vegetable forms of things, but even in the world of mineral, it is evidence. It is in evidence. In the crystallization of minerals, there is to be observed a phenomenon closely allied to the process of reproduction in the lowest form of animals and vegetable cell life. These cells reproduce themselves by growth and division. The crystals do likewise. From the mother liquid, the infant crystals begin to form. Once formed, they draw themselves more nourishment from the mother liquid and begin to form the nucleus of a new crystal, which is finally split off from the older crystal. In many ways, the phenomenon of crystallization resembles those of the manifestation of creative sex activity in cell life. And this is to be expected, for if the sex principle is universal, then it must be in evidence in at least a faint degree in everything. Even in the atoms back of the crystal shape, we may see it in operation in the shape of chemical affinity. Even in the electrons of which the atom is composed, we may see its presence indicated by the positive, quote, male electrons and the negative, quote, female counterparts. The first energizing and the latter generating shape and form. And even in the energies and forces of nature, we see the evidences of polarization, which in the end is a manifestation of sex. William Marion Reedy, in his brilliant essay entitled The Law of Love, calls attention to the universality of the sex principle, or as he calls it, the principle of love. He says, among other things, Professor von Schroen's recent alleged discovery of life and sex in crystals need not astonish the world. Man has felt that there was nothing inanimate from the beginning of time. His intuition has always been in advance of his reason. His poetry has led his science everywhere. The oneness of things is being demonstrated in these days. That is, all biology has resolved life back to the single cell in which all the senses are converged. Sex is a differentiation of a single cell. Philologists assert that originally the name of God in every language was both masculine and feminine. Life is but force. Matter is held together by force. Matter therefore has life. The star is brother to the clod. The moth is kin to the mastodon. Worlds are made to blossom in space as flowers are fructified by floating pollen. Mingling atoms make suns. Cells seek affinity with cells. Dust blown from the unimaginable outer rim of silence finds its fellow dust and, engaging in amorous whirls, a nebula is formed. And from that nebula, suns and cisterns of suns. Worlds in contact give birth to worlds. The crystals meet and kiss and mingle and produce other crystals. Love is the only law. Love is spirit. and matter is the child of spirit. All this any man who reads may know. Reedy continues, quote, nowhere, says Balzac, is motion sterile. Everywhere it engenders number, but it may be neutralized by a superior resistance, as in minerals. This neutralization, Professor Schroen's discovery disproves conclusively, if he has made the discovery. The motion is in the crystal itself, the instinct whereby it seeks out its mate that it may increase and multiply. Out of the single cell, protoplasma, amoeba, vorticella, in combination, but each seeking its own, comes variation or number and ultimately harmony. The atoms themselves, almost inconceivable, operate upon one another in the workings of these forces. The pollen from the flowers finds its way to another, miles away, and fecundates it, as Schmidt's father, born in Germany, found his mother, born in Australia. To the seemingly unimportant end that Schmidt should come to be, surely those ancients were not far wrong in deeming that atoms themselves endowed with conscious intelligence. There is life in everything and everywhere, and no life without love. As a man lies with a woman to perpetuate their kind, so do all things, infinitesimal and vast, through nature, bed with each other. The phallus is a mightier symbol than the virtuous of. It is found even in the cross. The sciences are a study of the universal lust. Flowers fecundates flowers, though one sends its seed to another on the wings of a wandering and uncertain bee. There is a reign of life between the between the planets. Collisions scatter worlds' fragments in the far furrows of space, and the fragments are gathered up by other planets, and life transferred to them from systems that have ceased to be. In mathematics, numbers cohabit, and the results are glimpses of the secrets of infinity. In chemistry, fluids and solids mingle to make new things. In physics, the savagery and the tenderness of force in destruction or reproduction produces power. Biology shows us the operation of the same affection to the development of life. Differentiation, selection, organization, all these are processes of intelligent amorousness in matter. This intelligent amorousness is the spirit in matter, the love that makes the world go round, that holds the universe ensnared. Reedy concludes as follows, quote, but where does it end, this intelligent amorousness? There is a limit to the finite, but the finite is part of the infinite. It would seem that the pursuit of this law of love would bring only one to the unknowable, pushing it only a little further back. Love may follow where love leads, unto the essence of God even, for God is love. The material aspect of love dwelt on so far need not deter us from pushing further north. To whoso believes in the oneness of matter and spirit, there is no unknowable. The end of the law of love and of the spiritual faculties for its perception can be the knowing of this unknowable, union with the infinite. Let us make a flight. End of quote. The arcane teachers see the presence of sex not only in the material forces and the forms of matter, but also in the very mind and spirit itself. The teaching is that every individual has not only evidences of both sexes within himself or herself in the physical body, but also that each has the elements of both sex principles within his mental realm. There are certain mental faculties distinctively masculine in their characteristics, such as the will, the logical faculties, and so on. There are also certain faculties which are distinctly feminine in their characteristics, such as the emotions or feelings, the imaginative faculties, memory, and intuition. Every individual, male or female, contains within himself or herself this dual nature of mind. The imagination, memory, and intuition are essentially feminine in all their characteristics. Their work is a bringing forth, an exercise of reproduction, or an exercise of the reproductive function on the mental plane. Nay, more even, desire is feminine in its nature and operates by coaxing, alluring, and drawing the will into action. The will and the logical faculties are essentially masculine and operate in the direction of energizing, applying force or energy, and stimulating the other faculties into action. Moreover, that region of mind, which is known to modern psychologists as the subjective or the subconscious, the subliminal, is feminine in its activities. It produces and brings forth. It is procreative in its nature. On the other hand, the objective or outer mind is essentially masculine in its nature. It creates nothing, but merely acts upon the feminine mentality in the direction of inciting it to activity and reproductive function. Intuition is distinctively feminine, and it's diametrically opposed in polarization to its companion, logical reasoning. We have not the space to follow up this thought in detail, but those who are familiar with the characteristics of the various mental faculties and regions of the mind will have no trouble in identifying and classifying them according to their mental sex. In connection with the subject of the manifestation of sex on the mental plane, we may say here that the arcane teachers hold that the phenomena of thought transference, telepathy, mental influence, hypnotism, etc., are explainable only by the admission of the existence of sex in the mind. The workings of suggestion and autosuggestion are also explained when this principle is grasped. The idea of sex in the mental faculties and regions give one the key to psychic phenomena. All energizing or projection by thought waves, etc., is caused by the activities of the masculine principles of mind being employed. All receiving or impression of the influences so sent forth is caused by the activities of the feminine principles of mind. The thought or suggestion sent forth is a masculine effort. Its reception is feminine. The result arising therefrom is essentially procreative or reproductive, and is manifested by the feminine principle always. The domination of some persons by the will of others is akin to the tyranny exercised by the male in many forms of life, not excepting the humankind. The alluring, fascinating, coaxing, attracting, and drawing activities of desire are decidedly feminine and often enmesh the strongest will, just as the strongest man often surrenders to a fascinating woman's wishes. The will operates by force. Desire operates more subtly, but not the less strongly. The individual manifesting strong willpower exercises his or her masculine mentality, while the man or woman manifesting personal magnetism, charming and fascinating those with whom he or she comes in contact, exercises his or her feminine mentality. The will forces and drives. The desire, emotion, feeling, or magnetism draws and attracts. The feminine is always the finer, subtler force, which in the end overcomes the apparently stronger force of the masculine mentality. Each, however, the masculine and the feminine, has its place, and the best work is performed when they are both strongly developed and actively employed. An understanding of the subject of sex in mental action will give the magic glasses through which many of the riddles of psychology may be seen clearly solved. We suggest that those to whom the idea is new put on these glasses of the new understanding and read anew their old works of psychology, psychic phenomena, occultism, quote, new thought, and so on, and see how clearly illumined many hitherto dark pages have grown. This is the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3 will be the evolution of sex.